Before I introduce William Wegman, I want to acknowledge the support of the University of Illinois, of course, the College of Fine and Applied Arts, School of Art and Design, the Krannert Art Museum, and specifically the School of Art and Design Ed Zagorski Visitors Fund. And Ed is here today. And yeah. And thank you for your support of this. William Wegman is one of the most distinguished alumni from the School of Art and Design. This is regardless of the fact that the painting faculty back then did not know exactly what to do with this painter who didn't paint back then, or that his MFA thesis project had to be taken down because of fire code violations. He moved on from Illinois to develop a creative and successful practice with an incredible range, from photography to painting, from conceptual to funny, from young audiences to old, from dog people to art people. And Wegman's work is critically recognized, collected by major museums like the Museum of Modern Art, the Whitney Museum of American Art, and the Pompidou, among others, while also existing in populist forms like children's books, Sesame Street, and David Letterman. This just proves that William Wegman embraces it all, and I would suggest that he does this by basing his practice on a critical openness, a serious and playful acceptance of the possibility that whatever might happen is a creative opportunity. I would like to think that this virtue was developed when he was a graduate student here at the University of Illinois. Perhaps it was influenced by John Cage or the biological computing lab, or simply the wide open landscape. In any case, this was confirmed for me when I found a copy of his qualifying exam from 1966. And I think I'm maybe one of 4 people to have read it. But in one section, he was asked to comment upon, or the question was, the frame as a positive factor in the visual arts. Instead, Wegman wrote about the limitations of the frame and its inevitable failure to keep things out. And he demonstrated this in the most reflexive, poetic conclusion that also answered the question at hand. He wrote, "The only solution left is to make art and life synonymous, so that everything accidental, foreign, and unexpected would contribute to it rather than end or rebuke it." And this next part is where it gets interesting because he puts this idea right into practice, incorporating his surroundings of the exam room and the sounds into his answer. He says, "Thus, the telephone call, the Illinois Central, the gum snapper, and rain on the roof, rather than a deadly intrusion on a composition, becomes a positive addition to the total dynamic, constantly evolving soundscape." On this note, please help me welcome back William Wegman.
We need his mic on.
Mic on.
Do you need this? Am I doing it now? Oh, here we go. Wow, the tickling worked. How about that? But yes, I've always been bumbly and made lots of mistakes, and realized once that 2 mistakes look, if you announce them, it looks like on purpose, and you can get away with it. And I've made an incredible and wonderful life in all kinds of areas with that. But I want to talk a little bit about when I was back here, because the other thing that you did mention was the School of Music, which I was really attached to. It was a wonderful place where all of us from English, art, electrical engineering met and did performances. And my quote seems like something I stole right out of John Cage, doesn't it? I mean, and he was here at the time. Salvatore Martirano is very close to him. Amazing poet Holloway over here, who's here. And I really did have a hard time here, but the longer I'm away from it, the better it was. And now it's just the most amazing school I've ever been to, and I'm anxious to have my daughter reply and go here. So what is happening to me? I don't know. But let me tell you a little story through pictures, and I'm going to show like 50 years of work in like 30 minutes. So, and I'll linger on some, but not others. So I go this way now, right? Down, you go low. Boom.
Yeah. This is the first photo. Can we make some of these lights go a little lower, or it would look better, I think, on the screen? Perfect. This was the first photograph that I made that made me say, and really literally I said, "Eureka! I know what I'm doing. I'm not documenting performances. I'm not taking pictures of sculpture. You know, I was involved in photography, but this made me realize that I could make pictures. It was 11 by 14. It was the size of something, or 8 by 10. It was something that you would see in a magazine. It didn't have like a wall presence, which I wanted. I wanted it to be in books, and I wanted it to be in magazines, and I wanted everyone, including my mother, to see it. It was published in Avalanche magazine, I believe, and it reached a pretty good audience. It was the only good photograph I ever took. Nothing comes close to being this good. It had the zone system in it, even though I never studied it. Art Sensiba would be proud of me. But it just so happened that that's what happens to me in photography, and it wasn't trained in it, and occasionally I'm lucky. Here's a more common picture of mine with my first dog, Man Ray, and you kind of can see a little bit of how I think about what I'm doing. I'm doing something that's just there. And why is it there? Well, you see that the floor's been slid 90 degrees, and how is that possible? And that's what I want to do. I want to kind of trap you in the concept of it and make you stay there longer than you ordinarily would. And this one, even more so, even though people today might not bother looking at this, I tried to double and half things that were in my studio. You can see I painted out a light bulb. I've added a can of paint. I've put another block down. I made this rather incidental, scattered look become complicated by a doubling. And when I got this picture, I realized that, gee, a photograph is really like a map, and how inadequate this map is of the space that I was looking at, and how much more, but how weird the information is that was delivered to me in this kind of flatness. And this is some of the things that I was thinking about as I was pursuing this. The other thing is that, you know, how photography can tell an incorrect story, but a wonderful one. Like a happy ending of this glass of milk here is obviously that didn't happen. And so I was working with a 2 1/4 camera, making these setups. I'd make little drawings of what I wanted to do, and then set it up and go about doing it, and then I printed them myself. So that's how I did it, and it was wonderful. And then I started to take things just a little bit out of place. I had been working. Some of my influences were minimal and conceptual art, and so the first photographs that I took looked kind of like Saul LeWitt, I suppose, but you know, maybe with a dog on the white box rather than nothing. But this took it to a different place, and I think it led me into a space that historians have called postmodernism. It's not a useful term to me anymore, but I've heard that echoed about these pieces. And another sort of game with photographs. This was a student of mine. I taught in 1970. I taught in Cal State Long Beach for a year, and one of my students, Tim, was married to Lynn, whose twin Terry was often around, and so I mapped Terry's marks onto Lynn here. So it's another little game. And here's Tim, who we were just talking about. Hi, Tim. Tim is like a bigger version of me, and I found some bigger tools for Tim and set Tim up next to me. And I think I'm probably taking this picture myself with some sort of remote bubble, but I could have asked Terry or Lynn to take the picture too. And here's another thing that I was thinking about, speaking of the frame and the window. I've been talking about that a lot lately, the past couple of days, what you can see just outside the frame, what you can't see. This is titled 1 or 2 spoons, 2 or 3 forks, because you can tell kind of what's in the picture, but you're not really sure what the other one might be. And that's interesting to me, what you can and can't see. And I play with that a lot in my paintings, which you can see in the gallery here. And we were talking about mistakes earlier. If you make mistakes on purpose, it becomes fine. So this is called 3 mistakes, and obviously you know that I did this on purpose, but it refers to things we've all done. We've all had these experiences, so we can feel quite at home. Here's something some of us can do, but I can't, and but I'm pretending that I can through trick photography, which is no longer a term anyone would use with the digital age. You don't say trick photography, but back then it was really fun to play with trick photography, and that's what I did here, reading 2 books. Then I got really, it's called Big Little Finger, and I got really, I've been making these videos for a while, as well as these photos, and I felt the urge to be able to just make work right on my table. I didn't want to go back to painting. I didn't want to do wall pieces, but it seemed okay to make these pencil drawings on typing paper. So I used a number 2B pencil, and I made these very simple drawings on typing paper. And this is called Landscape Color Chart. And when people say to me, I really like your drawings, I think the people that said that are really intelligent. If they say, I really like your dog pictures, they might be really stupid. But anyone who likes my drawings tend to be really smart. Not all people who like my photographs of dogs are stupid, but it's just something that it just attracted a much wider audience, let's say. X-ray of a peach in a dish. So you smart people out there will go, aha, there, and I will agree with you. And we could meet later and form our own little genius community. Right? This is called Doe Buck. You can see I'm veering a little bit away from the number 2B pencil. You know what's happening to me is I'm really enjoying drawing and painting, which I did as a child, which is why I went to art school. Then I found out that that wasn't, where art was, and you've got to be more ambitious and so forth. So I let that go, but here you can see that I really like making these lines. And a really bad thing happened to me in 1975. I got a Guggenheim, and I bought a Hasselblad, and I started to take really crappy pictures. So I really needed the slower format, the 2 1/4. Somehow I was taking pictures outside, which I have no business doing. And so I had in my studio, there was a lot of these bad photographs around, and I was compelled to start drawing on them. And here's some examples of those. These are from about the mid-'70s. And here's one that I like quite a bit. It's a little boy in Tofte, Minnesota at a logging convention or whatever, contest. And I double exposed my TV set and painted in the fellow in dark glasses that's looking back this way. And it makes a kind of closed circuit, so it had some sort of, I thought it was kind of like TV or video. Now it would be a perfect segue to show video. I brought 3 short videos, which I'm going to show now, and I'll get back to the rest. The massage chair. That's that one. Yeah. All you industrial designers will appreciate
I
this.
thought perhaps you'd like to see a demonstration of the new massage chair that we just got in. The reason for it looks revolutionary. It doesn't look really like a typical massage chair, and that's because I think Mies van der Rohe had a part, or at least he was a consultant to the firm that designed this. Notice the all steel construction and the kind of simple back. It's not real flashy like the kinds that you see usually advertised on TV. The principle, there's really a good reason for this metal construction, is it works on the same principle as a tuning fork. They give you this striker when you buy the chair, and when you strike it, it sends pleasurable waves up and down your whole body, which relaxes you. And these waves last for anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds, depending on whether you get the short leg or the long leg chair. So I guess the only real drawback is you have to hit it quite often to experience a lasting pleasure sensation. You find your own, what speed you like best. If you like a lot of waves, then you strike it quite frequently.
Going to give yourself a headache?
Now we'll do that. There's 3, so we'll do 3 consecutively. Yeah, Randy's sick. Oh, Mom? Mom? I think Randy's going to be sick. And then the last one. There's one more.
You got P-A-R-K was spelled correctly, and that was good. Wait a minute. And you spelled O-U-T right, but when it came to beach, you spelled it B-E-E-C-H, which is like the, well, there's a gum called beech nut gum, but the correct spelling is, we meant beach like the sand, so it should have been like the ocean, B-E-A-C-H. See, that's the difference. Well, okay, I forgive you. But remember it next time. Okay,
Okay, we'll go back to the slides then. Yeah, it's kind of hard to top that, but there he is again. This was when he was 9 years old, and I never took color pictures before, but Polaroid invited me to come and use this gigantic instant camera called the 2024, and I brought Man Ray. He was 9 years old, and I knew it was in color, so I brought a bottle of Revlon Red, and that would be, you know, I would inch my way into color. And so there he is. It's called Fay Ray, and later I would get a dog and name her Fay Ray. And it was a different way of making pictures because I would go to the studio in Cambridge, Massachusetts, drive from New York, and stop and visit my parents on the way and stay with a friend in Boston and just find stuff. I wouldn't really think of what I was going to do until I was there. And that was different from making the sketches like how I used to. This was a kind of a manifesto breaking picture that I made. I didn't like beauty or anything like that in my work. And this was supposed to be funny. I put false eyelashes on Man Ray, but they don't show up. So it looks just serious and quite lovely, like beauty or something like that. And anyway, I liked the picture, but I had to explain it to myself. And more, you know, each picture. This was Man Ray's last picture. He died, of course, in this. So, really? No. No. And here's another really embarrassing picture. So from being like a conceptual artist that worked like Joseph Kossuth or Carl Andre or Saul LeWitt, here I'm doing this. And but it entertained me, and it seemed weird and okay. And somehow I let it happen. And it really, this was what I imagined would be Man Ray's last picture, my dog Man Ray. I would just set him off on the lake in Maine and drive back to New York. But I did go and get him, and you know, we carried on. We carried on. This was one of the late pictures. I call it dusted. It's with flour rather than powder. And it looks kind of, I thought it looked like early Philip Guston painting, right? Art historians. Or Jimmy Durante, historians of television. but it seemed like he was in the limelight. There was something quite magical and quite beautiful about this image to me. And here's my next dog, Fay Ray, and to me this is like Pandora. She's coming out, giving me all kinds of new ideas and a whole nother way of work. Unlike Man Ray, she was a thoroughbred, and she looks very, powerful and beautiful and has those gorgeous eyes. And I got kind of involved in reveling in that. And here's a chance I did have to make that picture I thought of earlier funny, because you can see in Fay Ray here, you can see the false eyelashes. Fay is sitting next to Andrea, my assistant at the time. And I suppose it's a good time to talk about anthropomorphic pictures that I made, which I always had an aversion to. This camera is vertical, and every picture is vertical. You can't turn it to its side. So I always was kind of stressed about how to get things into that space. And I remember bringing in modeling stands and having the dog be taller. And I'd wrap things around the dog, and Andrea would help steady the thing. And it looked at one point like Fay had arms and Andrea was talking to me. And it was eerie enough. Well, this is a stepping back, but how did I do that? But anyway, I made the dog tall, and that led to these other pictures. And then came another situation when Fay had puppies, and I had a larger cast to work with. And here's Fay being what she does best, which is being very still and really liking to have things complicated to do. Some dogs like it to be challenging. Like, is that all? You're just going to make me stand here? Put something on me. And Fay was really that way. She said, you could put that pepper right on my tooth if you hook the wire around there. So you got to, this camera is bigger than this box here, and so Fay's right there, and I'm here. And I'm putting things on her, and when I say ready, Fay, she looks right into the lens, which is really unusual. It's not like going, come on, Fay. It's like, ready, Fay? Boom. It's a wonderful way to get to know your dogs, having this kind of life that I have with them. This is absolutely killer picture. I'll never take a better one. I should have stopped. It's the best picture I've ever taken of a female dog on one of these type of chairs. Even though I've tried, again, to make this happen, that's what photography is. It happens, and it's like, do you go throw it away or save it? And this is one that I really cherish. I call it Lolita for obvious reasons. So, and there's Lolita, or Batty, furthered. And there she is again. So, so I'd go to Polaroid, and by now it's in New York. I don't have to go that far. And it's kind of our job. John Reuter's there setting up the camera for us. Lunch will be served. There's the assistant, whoever, and it's sort of part of our life. We go once in a while and do these pictures. Then other events, Batty in turn had puppies. This is Chip at 1 day old. The camera came to me. I didn't make Chip walk all the way to the Polaroid studio because he can't walk yet, or see, and you'll see, this is Chip 6 months later playing the flute with his mother Batty. So they develop really fast. And this is probably the most amazing dog that I've ever had that I dressed up, and I made children's books with him, and I think something must have happened to his brain, because you could put anything on him and he had no effect. Like some dogs, you put a hat on and they go, ooh, but he was just there. And that is the first tall dog that I made. I put Fay on a little table there, kind of a rustic table, and tossed this really homely dress over her on a hanger. And then, of course, Fay loves the ball, so, and her yellow eyes really tell that story of this picture. And again, it's a Polaroid. It's like one of a kind. And here's a whole new direction that I started to take. This is my version of the evil stepmother. And I thought, I was thinking about those movies with Joan Crawford in it, and I thought But I actually made a set here. I got wallpaper and little doodads to make a story, and it was the basis for my first children's book, which was Cinderella. I thought that would be a suitable subject because it's like adoption. You know, your evil stepmother, if you're bad to the child you adopt, or your fairy godmother if you're like me and are so wonderful to your dog and do everything for it. So, and here's different ways to make this illusion of a human figure out of a dog. You know, they're just there. They're just there. And that became really fun for me to figure out how to construct these mythical creatures that are a little bit sometimes like other things. And then what the hell, you know? That just, I was trying to do a parody movie and pictures of the Hardy Boys. And so I called mine the Hardly Boys. And I cast my dog Batty and Crookie, Faye's two girls, as the Hardly Boys because they're hardly boys, they're girls and dogs. Get it? So, too clever for myself sometimes. And this picture is, I don't know how I did this, with a Polaroid camera. How do you get two dogs sailing a boat with no one in it? Isn't that amazing? I have no idea how I did that. It's not an amazing picture unless you really think about it. It's just, a typical sailboat on a lake with two dogs sailing it with only sweaters for arms. And a lot of wind in Rangeley, too. And then, after doing the anthropomorphic things, I started to get attacked by art critics and ignored by artists. So I wanted to do something that looked more like art. So I went back to, I got rid of the characters and rather, I don't know, mean-spiritedly, I said, the hell with it, and I'll give you this. So it didn't work, but anyway. So I did these really formal things. This reminded me of Leger. I said, okay, the art world like this, because Leger is an artist, it looks more like that kind of period, and it's not a dog dressed up, and it's formal, and I'll get that respect back, which I so desperately need. And this looks like a Parcheesi, or I called it Parker Brothers. It looked like kind of a game board. These are really absurd and difficult to make, thinking of the Polaroid camera, because people are hiding behind holding colors up. But it's not like Photoshop like you could do now, and that's a whole other problem with the photography today. It's almost too easy to do something like this. And then having multiple dogs, lying around my house made me think of other things they could be besides people. They're sort of moving into other inanimate situations. So this is just set paper with the dogs lying in front. And I really like these. There's one of these in the show upstairs, and it's strange how it looks like color and black and white, doesn't it? I don't know why that is, but it's an interesting picture. Whoa. This was my assistant's dog. It's a blackish Weimaraner with very yellow eyes who was addicted to strobes. So once I took its picture, it just needed more. So I took 4 exposures of this, bang, 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 bang. And it moved slightly and made this wonderful beaded look to it. So it's pretty stunning, isn't it? Thank you. And here she is again, this almost blackish Weimaraner. I just stuck tape on her to make the skeleton. So now, what's great about a show like this that I'm doing is you don't see any of the bad pictures, but there's really kind of a lot of work to make these things work right, not because of the dogs, but because, our situation. And the camera was very fragile, too. It would break, and you'd have time to go and think about it. Another one of these double exposures. I love the kind of edges. You can see the process. They come out of the camera, and then you cut it off and pin it up, and you decide whether to do it again or if you got it. This is a dog that I named Penny, and she's really probably the sweetest, easiest dog to work with I've ever had. Unfortunately, she died of lymphoma at 8 years, And it was quite sad. She's just such a lovely thing. Like she didn't deserve that. But that's the trouble with dogs. They just come and then they leave you. This is Bobbin, who just left me last month. He was the last one related to Faye. He's 15 and a half, which is an awesome, great number of years for this type of dog. This is him just looking into a sheet of plexi, so it looks almost like it's kind of modulated somehow, but it's really just a real space. And here is Bobbin and his father outdoors. We took lots of pictures with the Hasselblad on this island in Maine. We would take a boat there and just walk around looking for places, and it was kind of fun. I think of it as like catch and release fishing. You see a rise, and then you cast it there, and then you move on. And the dogs really love that. They love working outdoor. This dog, right, who's floating on water here, is really looking at a duck down there, not another person holding up a ball or a treat or anything. And that's great to see the dogs being borrowed and and doing their own thing. And it's kind of like parallel play if you have it. This dog was such a show-off, and I could not keep her from doing this. So I said, okay, I'll take your picture, and I did. And this is the dog Candy, who was Penny's mother, who just died on Valentine's Day at 14. So this was like probably her most amazing picture, Candy. And then, there's a whole other thing that's going on. In the mid-'80s, I'm taking, these pictures are from probably 89 or 91 that I just showed you. This is from like 86. And I had the urge to paint. But I didn't want anybody to know that I was painting, so I painted in Maine, and I cut the telephone wires so no one would tell other people I was painting, because I wanted to kind of figure out what it was I was doing. I had the urge to paint, and one of the things that tortured me was what's a good subject? Well, I painted buckets of paint here, and I painted tents in the background because tents are made out of canvas and oil and canvas and not telling everyone. So it's kind of a private little game to get me started. And here's another one which goes back to the mistakes. I did a bad job on the trees, so I thought if I stuck a bobby pin in the picture, it would look intentional. And that's a trick that I rely on all the time, like screw-ups that you do. And here's another one of those canvas tent things. This is on canvas. Tents look a little bit like Cezanne. Cezanne is art, Cubism's art. This is a suitable subject. And nowhere will you find a dog in my paintings. That's one of the things that I'm very strict about. And here's one of the early postcard pieces. You'll see a lot of these pictures in the show where I'm taking something and just imagining what's just outside the frame or what could be outside and what's logical about bringing you hither and there. My first ones were always on paper. Here's one with that I extrapolated these characters, and these 4 buildings with someone at a golf tournament. Sometimes I felt like I was reinventing Cubism, sometimes surrealism, sometimes it was just a way to generate things. But I like to start with one of these images and then paint around until I can't think of anything, and then throw something else in there. And it's just, there's a close-up of that last one. They're really hard to photograph, which I also like, because I want you to come and see them, not have me talk about them here. That's why I'm going to rush through this. Rush, 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 rush. Some of them, you kind of get an idea of what I'm doing. Here's one that looks like I got involved in Cubism again. And some of them are comical, like this one is pretty funny, I think. Although, unlike my drawings and video, you're not going to laugh out loud. You're just going to go, huh, or, that's funny. And this one's funny, too. It's a sort of a comment on amateur art, but this is called amateur cubism. So there's one postcard of kind of a Rockport Sunday painter in there, and I've kind of collected the imagery around and repositioned it to make a composition of my own. And more of these, all circle images. And this has 3 cards: a Wesleyan College pitch, palace in Vienna, and a fascist Italian war postcard. So here's a detail of the Wesleyan teacher and the Italian postcard. So it's kind of fun to find new homes for these cards. Here's one that's got a Degas, a photograph of some skiers, and sort of a nature scene from Alaska or something that I put all together into one frame. And I was thinking almost like a Beckett play, perhaps. Let's think of it that way, so we can stop talking. There's a close-up of that. You know, it's really hard to paint figures if you're not really a good painter. And the postcard gives me, it's a trick. It makes people think that I'm good at painting figures. But when you see this figure right here, you realize I'm not good, but I don't really need to be. This one should have been in the show. It's called Other Artists, Including Me, except the person wouldn't lend it for this show. It's got a very hilarious treatment of a Jackson Pollock. You'll see that on the floor. And it's got all of these extended images in it of paintings, including one of my own photographs, but extended Frida Kahlos and Ryders and Picassos and Lichtensteins and Kandinsky, of course, who's the most fun to make parodies of. And this was pretty recent, and the title of the show, but you can't see this one. There's a detail of that. Like, that's Brahms in there. So, and this is some photographs that I've taken that recently that aren't with the Polaroid camera. They're just with the digital, and it's in my studio in New York. And I'll just show you some of these, and you'll see where I'm going. This is the 2 dogs, Penny and Candy, mother and daughter, and I threw this fabric over them. It looks like fire, I think. Am I right? Or spirit photography. And another looks like spirit photography. And this is a pretty amazing picture. This is my amazing dog, Flo, who's the most Faye-like, in that she loves to work, but she's very caring. She really is concerned how things might be. I think I might have some more pictures of her. There she is with this thing leaning against her. She's a little bit concerned, but she's willing, and she'll do it. And that's her son. That's her brother, Topper, who's really a great dog. And that's hard to do, make a dog put their foot like that. My vet told me that my dog must be brain damaged to allow me to do that. But no, you can get these dogs to do things for you, at least for the picture. So this is very elegant, I think. And again, some recent work with some furniture that we borrowed from Herman Miller, and it led to this other body of work. And that's the amazing Flo again in one of these chairs. Here she is now. I love the yellow of her eyes and the yellow in that chair. Again, the photographs are a little better in real life than in projections here. And I'm going to close, I think, with a few pictures of Candy, since she's in heaven now, flying. So that's the dog that was standing on her head there. I like to think of her like that. So there we have it.
Illinois.